Hello everyone, this is Greg Alexander and welcome to the SBI podcast. Our guest today lives right here in my backyard of Dallas, Texas. It's rare to find a marketing leader of today's experts' caliber who specifically asked to speak on the topic of campaign planning. I was elated. That told me instantly we had a rare marketing leader who could elevate the conversation on campaign planning. Our guest has an undergraduate degree in engineering from Ohio State, and he coupled that with an MBA from the Moore School of Business at South Carolina University. The ideal blend of technical and business is a unique combination you will benefit from hearing today. Perhaps what struck me the most about our expert today is that he's been a marketing executive for nearly 20 years, all of those in B2B and a majority of those in cybersecurity. It's as if he came right out of the box as a VP of marketing who has been a VP of marketing talent since 1999, when most of us, let's face it, of the same age, are grinding our ways through the lower and middle rungs of the corporate ladder. So clearly we have a superstar marketing leader that major companies recognize at an early age and throughout his career. So if you're interested in the topic of campaign planning, of being able to capture the attention of your customers and prospects, be able to directly attribute revenue to your marketing campaigns, and justify your budgets, these are the types of things that I talked to Michael about today. So stick around, listen to the show, and I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the SBI podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they're going to make theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to capture the attention of customers and prospects. So why this topic? Every market has a sweet spot. Campaigns generate revenues when focused directly at this sweet spot. Campaigns that are not hyper-targeted simply do not. To generate a return on marketing campaign dollars, it requires that each campaign have an objective, a timeline, a budget, accurate lists, correct media mix, and a compelling call to action, just to name a few. So that's why we're going to talk about this today. It's a complex subject, and I think we can all sharpen our saw, so to speak. So my name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm your host. And helping me with our demonstration today is an executive who knows a thing or two about this topic. His name is Michael Callahan, and he's the Chief Marketing Officer of Firemon. So Michael, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here.
And for the benefit of the audience, can you give us a little bit about your background, introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So in IT, sales and marketing for a little more than 20 years now. Started in a sales role and then moved from that into product management, product marketing, corporate marketing field, kind of run the gamut in marketing. Mostly in IT and predominantly in the security space.
Okay. And Firemon, for those that aren't familiar with that company, what do you guys do?
Yes, we do enterprise security management. And what that means is a lot of organizations have these unbelievably complex environments that they've invested in to essentially keep the bad guys out. And we manage all that. There's dozens and dozens, sometimes hundreds of devices and solutions that need to be managed. And we sort of from the top down, pull it all together, give a single view of what's going on in someone's infrastructure.
Great. And how long has Firemon been around?
About 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. So another hot cybersecurity company.
Yeah, growing like crazy. We had early on, we created the market and nice kind of slow growth, and then the last couple of years just growing like crazy. 50+% year over year. It's a fun place to be.
Oh, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
All right, so to facilitate our conversation, on the screen is SBI's campaign planning tool. We're going to ask our esteemed colleague here to kind of give his opinion on this. If you're listening to the show, now's a good time to watch the show, for this visual will increase your understanding of the topic. So let's jump into the questions here. So for each campaign, so if you notice kind of at that top layer, we want each campaign to have an objective, a timeline, a budget, and expected results. So you've been at this for 20 years, right? So how do you develop campaign objectives, timelines, budgets, and expected results?
Yeah, so they clearly all go together and you have to be thinking about all of them almost simultaneously. But I think it all starts initially with what's your company strategy? It has to be aligned with that. It's sometimes easy for people, and even in smaller companies, but particularly in larger companies, to get a little bit distracted on the thing being the campaign versus the thing being how do we drive revenue? How are we going to hit our number? How are we going to execute on the strategy we have? So it all starts with what is the strategy, and then build a campaign out of that.
Okay, so let's talk about your use case here. So what is your company strategy?
So we're going to lead the market. So ours is grow faster than the market, faster than our competitors, take share and continue to innovate, drive business, double-digit growth from new and existing customers.
Okay, so how would we cascade that strategy down to something like a campaign objective?
A couple ways. I think there's a couple of, I often think of things like in a decision tree kind of format and thing. First off, what's the audience? Right, you always want to start with who you're trying to talk to or approach, and so you make that fundamental decision. And there's a couple choices there. There's one like it may be partners, because maybe you're selling through partners and not directly to an end user, or another one could be you're talking to the end user directly, or to an existing customer or new customers. In our case, we have focused the marketing team on the new piece, right? Because we have dedicated field resources out with the customers, working with them every day, the current customers, to make sure they're happy, satisfied, getting value from the product, and then selling them additional solutions they may need. So we've made the trade-off that that's where they're going to focus. So when we build the campaigns, we're focused almost exclusively on generating new business or going to new customers.
So that's a great example, right? So your company strategy is you want to lead the market, so grow faster than the market and your competitors. That's going to require you to acquire lots and lots of new customers. So having a campaign objective tied to new customer acquisition makes all the sense in the world.
In fact, it's key. I mean, that is it. That is the, if you look at just about any business, there is a maximum amount that you're ever going to get from your existing customers. Now, you may continue to develop some new solutions, and you can increase that at a certain rate, but the growth would absolutely slow down over time. The lifeblood is bringing in new, and we made that very intentional trade-off. The marketing team is going to focus on bringing in new people, where the sales team will focus more on the existing people.
Right. Now, one of the, I guess, challenging things is that your team comes to you, they lay out a campaign design. We want to launch this campaign for these reasons, and then you're going to say, great, how many new customers is that going to get us?
Yeah.
And they're going to say, well, I don't know, because of this attribution problem and that attribution problem. So it makes it difficult for you to say, okay, go ahead and spend the money. Yeah. So how do you handle that, that tricky balance of art and science and trying to forecast what the results of an individual campaign may be?
Yeah, and I think you used the right phrase there, that it's this balance of art and science, especially because you're talking about people and you're talking to people and you're communicating to them through a certain type of word or a tone or a style and certain creative. You've got to make sure that you're balancing that art and science right. What I try to do is I look at both sides of that and say, is this compelling creative? Is this compelling tone? And if we pass that box, then I'll move over to the other one and say, what do we think the returns are going to be? The more metrics you can have that show historically how things have moved through the funnel, from number of inquiries you might get or conversions, you can kind of reverse engineer the math to say, yeah, this does look like what we're going to get in terms of number of new customers if we execute this way and hit these targets. Yeah. But then you got to monitor it all along, right? You got to all the way say, well, how is it doing, and not just wait till the end of a 6-month campaign to see, oh, it worked or it didn't work. You've got to right off the bat say, are we hitting the numbers or not? And
then tweak it along the way based on that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I led off the show talking about the importance of understanding the sweet spot in our market. One of the things that drives me crazy is that we work with guys like you, and we say, so tell me about your market. And they're like, yeah, it's a $100 billion market. Okay. So, within that, your sweet spot, and then making sure that we're allocating our resources, which is people, money, and time, exclusively on that sweet spot so that we don't leak valuable resources, because that's the one constraint we all have. There's only so many people, only so much time, and only so much money, right? So what is your sweet spot, and how did you guys figure that out?
Well, so for us in particular, we found there's a couple of numbers. One of them is, if someone has more than about 20 security devices, and in this case you could almost use that interchangeably with firewalls, it's too hard for them to manage it themselves. And so they need some sort of help, which is what we do with security management. Or if they have multiple vendors, So most companies will have a dual or even more vendor strategy because they don't want to be tied to one particular technology. And if you have these multiple technologies, those vendors are not incented at all to help manage the other vendors because they want to be exclusive. And so if we see those, if we look at the environment, we know that's a sweet spot for us. There's another dynamic or another angle where you'd say, well, what may be a particular industry? So we find that there are certain industries that are much more dependent on security, and then because of that, dependent on us, finance is an example, healthcare is an example. A lot of what we deal with are compliance and audit type situations, and companies that are under compliance regulations like PCI, which stands for Payment Card Industries, they store credit card data, so they need to go through these audits, make sure that they're compliant. That's a sweet spot for us. Yeah. So we know we have a couple variables that we look at, and then we hone in on that, on the combination of those, and market to those as effectively as we can. It's not perfect, but the better or closer you can get to the sweet spot, the better.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say you're going to throw a net. You hope you throw the net at the right fish, but you're going to catch some things in the net that aren't the fish that you want. It's just the nature of it, nature, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned when you're evaluating whether or not to greenlight a campaign that you look at how compelling is the creative, so the artwork, the copywriting, etc. Yeah. How do you guys develop value propositions in such a way that it just doesn't sound like industry gobbledygook and using the same words that everybody else uses?
It's so hard. I'll tell you that, because it's especially in technology and even more so in security. Everyone does sound the same, and everyone uses very similar words, has a similar approach. What I'm doing, which I think is pretty innovative in our space, there's a few companies that are kind of leading this, and is to take this typical B2B type mentality or B2B messaging and creative, and replace it with more of the B2C type stuff. So as consumers, we all have different sites, different creative, different ads, different whatever that we like and we're drawn to. And then there's this crazy thing happens as you go into the office and you're selling to other companies and you completely forget that and you just create boring creative and boring messaging. We're taking a lot of risks and trying to innovate in that area so that it is, people do feel like it's more personal to them, where the consumer companies have done a wonderful job making people feel like you're talking to them one-on-one, where the B2B companies in general, it's just, let's produce a bunch of stuff and throw it out there. We've been trying to innovate in that area and really make that so people feel like we're talking directly to them.
And do you do your own creative, or do you have an agency that helps you with that, or a combo?
We go outside for it.
You do?
Yeah. And I've worked in both models. What I found is that internally, even though you try to not do it, you end up getting blinders, and you end up being, you don't see the possibilities. Yeah. And so I found it better if I go outside for the creative piece, and it's worked really well.
Yeah. Nothing like a great creative agency.
Yeah, absolutely true.
They're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
All right, it's a good time for us to take a break. So we're going to take a quick break from the interview to invite you, audience members, to participate in a remarkable experience. I'd like to personally invite you to the studio, a multi-million-dollar, one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art executive briefing center located in my hometown of Dallas, Texas. It was developed by SBI specifically for executive teams like you, those that sit inside of companies with aggressive revenue growth goals, who don't have a lot of time to waste and have a lot on the line. Let's face it, to grow revenues faster than your industry and your competitors each and every month, quarter, and year, it's a pretty hard thing to do. A visit to the studio increases the probability of making your number because the sessions are built on the proven strength of people like our guest here today that have innovative emerging best practices like getting B2B marketing creative to the point of B2C personalization. That's a pretty interesting idea. That's the type of thing you'll be exposed to if you come to a briefing at our briefing center. Okay, if you're interested in this, check out salesbenchmarkindex.com/the studio to book your visit. This is the SBI Podcast. We'll be right back.
Meet Chuck. He's the head of sales for a business services company. He stays on top of sales and marketing trends by listening to SBI podcasts on his morning commute.
The plan is to understand what your revenue target is.
Except on Tuesdays. That's when he jams out to 80s New Wave. On Wednesday, it's SBI all morning long. with more emerging best practices from the business world.
I'd say the biggest thing you need to avoid is leading without support.
Until Thursday, that's 90s Grunge Day. On Friday, it's back to business. That's when Chuck ends the week on a high note with more hits from SBI.
Sales is really straightforward. You make your number, you don't make your number.
Rock on, Chuck. How do you SBI? Get the most out of your SBI experience. Manage your account at howdoyousbi.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the SBI Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander, and today's guest is Michael Callahan, the Chief Marketing Officer for cybersecurity firm Firemon. Today, we're demonstrating how to capture the attention of customers and prospects by running great marketing campaigns. So let's jump back into the questions. So, in our way of thinking of things, a campaign is a collection of programs, okay? What you see on the board here is typically the 8 types of programs most B2B marketing organizations run. And they are awareness, self-explanatory. Cross-sell, you buy one product from me today, I want you to buy the other 3. New logo, which is obviously very important to you, that's new customer. Competitive replacement, so maybe in a more mature industry, I've got to get somebody to swap out the bad guys to be successful. Renewals, which is very important in the SaaS space. Migration, so I'm on the old stuff, I want to migrate you to the new stuff. And then nurture campaigns, which is a important but difficult one, which is I may have captured someone's attention, but they're not actively in the market right now, so I need to nurture them for a period of time. So we probably only have time for you and I to talk to maybe about a couple of these, so let me cherry pick a few of them. So you mentioned earlier that your team is focused on new logo acquisition,
That's
right? So do you have specific programs that you run there for new logos?
Tactic-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So it's you want to have a nice balanced mix of tactics or activities. I'll give a little bit of an evolution though. When I came into the role, we were, as a lot of startups are, very event-based. So we would be at trade shows, industry events, and you captured a lot of names.
Yeah.
Hard to tell if they're qualified, right? There was some qualification because they were at the event, and so it wasn't like they were looking for bicycles and they just happened to end up with security tools. But they're not as qualified and there's very little metrics that you can apply to it. So we migrated pretty heavily from that over to more digital campaigns. Events are still part of our mix, but we do more digital. So it is more paid search, some banners and AdWords, email marketing, database marketing, if you will, which email is one of the tactics you might use. But we're trying to do much more on the digital side than just on the event side. Every once in a while, you might do physical direct mail to grab someone's attention if it's something that's interesting and really targeted. When it's much more expensive to do a physical piece than something electronic.
Yep. So that's a great example for the audience. So audience members, what you just heard there is that you've got this program we call New Logo Campaign. And what you just heard from Michael was there's a series of things that you do that collectively equal that program, all designed against the goal of opening up new logos. What about maybe competitive replacement? I mean, do you guys have any competitors and do you have to go after them, or is it just greenfield all over the place?
So it's never greenfield, right? Okay. Especially, we started this 10, 15 years ago. We were by ourselves for a while, but now that we have 3, 4, 5 competitors in the space, competitive displacement is always one it's really interesting to me because I find that there's this dynamic that internally it just makes people feel good to say, we're going to go and do a rip and replace, and we're going to get rid of that competitor, and it's just that easy to do. But there is this bonding element to it to get as everyone kind of coalesces around that idea of ripping out a competitor. In practice, though, it's a lot more difficult. And what I found is someone's going to move if they're really irritated with you. By you sending them, especially in the security space, by sending an offer, even if it's a financial offer, you can almost give the product away. But because security solutions are so embedded in people's environments, it's really hard for them to remove it, right? They could have dozens of years of experience with something, and you just saying, hey, here's a promo, or you can have the product free and I'll just charge you maintenance, rarely works. The reason they change And there's multiple reasons, but the predominant one is they're just really mad at the current vendor, and something's gone wrong, or they failed an audit, or they've had a breach, or something's gone horribly wrong. And in that case, them moving has nothing to do with what you might do. They're going to move because they're irritated. Now, you can help them along those paths, but at least in our space, to try to get someone to move, really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so audience, so the big takeaway there is you've got 8 programs you can choose from. Those are just a couple of them for you to consider. But as you're thinking about planning your campaigns, think about the kind of the portfolio of programs that you may run and the activities underneath those. So that takes me to my next question, which is about activities. So choosing the right mix of activities, and most importantly, the sequencing of these activities is particularly important. So for example, direct mail, email, webinar, blog. So how do you sequence those things out? Do you run them all at the same time? You've mentioned digital marketing, which the tactic list there could be several hundred things you could do. Do you do them sequentially, one at a time? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's hard to do it, like have a perfect sequence, because people are often at different parts of the buying process, right? And there's some really validated statistics that say, at least in B2B, people are getting 60 to 70% of the way through the process before they ever even engage a sales rep. And so they're doing a lot of research on their own, and so you want to be where they are. And so you almost have to do a lot of things simultaneously, so that when they're looking for wherever they happen to be in the process, they find the information that they're looking for. That being said, if you can talk to someone or engage with them digitally, regardless of how you got to them, it could be an AdWord, it could be an email. Once you start that dialogue, then it's much more intentional because you know what they clicked on or what they were interested in, and then you can set up nurture streams that are related to that to take them through and touch them, as much as you want. It could be weekly if that's the kind of business you're in, or it could be not quite as frequently. But I think the first part may be less intentional, it's a little broader net, but then once you start the dialogue, you can definitely say, I'm going to take them through these steps because we think these are the most logical ones that they're going to be interested in.
Yeah. Let me share with you a concept that we talk to our clients about, and I want to get your opinion on this. So you mentioned that a buyer's journey, they're moving through the buyer's journey much more in a self-directed way before they talk to a human, okay? You probably do that in your personal life.
Absolutely.
God knows I avoid salespeople whenever I can. Right. So I agree with those stats. Is it 60%, 100%, 20%? Doesn't matter, it's happening, okay? Now, what we help our clients with is the first thing we help them with is to understand that buyer's journey. Maybe by product, maybe by segment, maybe by customer type, etc. And we do things like touch point analysis and sentiment analysis and things of that nature to try to figure that out. And you can get a pretty good feel for it because the web analytics tools these days are pretty powerful, okay? Then you build a sales process that says, okay, Sales 101 says sell the way the customer wants to buy, okay? So if you understand what the journey is, act appropriately at different steps. The third piece that people always forget, and for a marketer, this is the most important piece, is what I call the decision process. So you've got the buying process, the sales process, the decision process. And the decision process is the emotional journey that a buyer goes through before they make a decision. Yeah. And we lose sight of this. We think that our buyers, are linear. They just go through this linear path. They're robots. Yeah. They really don't care about emotions and logic and TCO and business case justification and feature set comparison, and all of this is going to make a difference. In the end, humans are selling to humans. Yeah. I'm a human. I'm saying to myself, geez, if I make this purchase, does it risk my job? Yeah. How do I look in front of my peers? Do I trust these guys? If something goes wrong, can I count on them to help me? I'm a skeptic. Are the claims they're making real? I'm concerned. These guys claim the leader. Are they really? What happens if they go out of business? Yeah. There's this emotional soup that they all sit in, right? Yeah. Ultimately, you have to connect with them emotionally, and you got to put an offer in front of them that inspires them to act. Yeah. So how do you develop your offers?
Yeah, you're on something it's critically important as part of the process, and I think you'll see if you don't do that, deals just die, right? They just die, and it's not like they even went to someone else; they just stop, right? Yeah. So you have to connect, and I think a lot of people forget that part of the process is that you need to be engaged, you need to be emotionally engaged. I think part of that comes down to the relationship that the sales rep has built along the way. that they feel like you are looking out for their best interests. So one of the things that we try to do is it's not just here is the TCO or here's the ROI, because that's relatively easy, right? You can build models around just about anything, and unless you're completely off base, it's going to build. You can justify that you have a good business case. What we try to do though is help the person that we're selling to or talking to see how this is going to help them, and bring some, like we try to make them the hero of the story, if you will, right? And bring them statistics that they can use, or facts maybe that they didn't know about prior, that they can then, when we leave the room and we're not, they're by themselves, they can be sharing internally, and it makes them the hero, right? They seem insightful and intelligent about what's going on, and it leads to a better position overall for them. If you can do that, of course you have to have like a product that's going to do what it says it's going to do, but if you can make the person that's buying the hero in all this, that emotional connection is unbelievably valuable, right? Almost priceless.
Yeah. It's another kind of emerging best practice that you share with the audience today, which is great, and I completely agree with you. I'm a student of Joseph Campbell, who came up with the hero's journey construct. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And every hero needs a villain, and every hero needs the wise advisor,
yeah,
and every hero needs kind of that weapon, right, to beat the villain. I'm simplifying, of course. So in your world, the hero is your customer. The villain is some type of, hacker who wants to hack into their system. You guys, it sounds like to me, you guys are both the weapon, so you're the tool that defeats the villain, but you're also the wise old man, so to speak, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you will, to Luke Skywalker. Is that true?
We try to be, right? Because, that's, at the end of the day, that's going to bring someone back for repeat business, right? Or one of the other campaigns, you had cross-sell or upsell. You want to be that. You want to be that advisor. And it's almost cliche. I've heard it for so many years of, we should be a trusted advisor. More times than not, that's lip service because people don't know how to turn that into practice. And to turn into practice is make the person that you're selling to, make them the hero. Be the one that helps them, and then take the back seat. You can be in the shadows. Let them take the spotlight. You know what drives me crazy about trusted advisor? People say, "Oh, I want to be the trusted advisor." I'm like, okay, you've got a monthly quota. Okay, trust takes time. Yeah. So you're going to earn this person's trust in a month? With like 3 conversations, right? Or an email? It's just not going to happen, yeah. No. All right, this is a good time for another break. Would you like to implement some of the things that Michael has spoken to you about today? If so, I think we can help. Consider having one of our experts spend some time with you in a workshop. If you want to get a feel for what's covered in the workshop, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/2017 workbook and download a copy of the workbook we use in these workshops. One more segment with Michael after the break. We'll be right back.
Your finish line is your number, and the only way to reach it is to make certain everyone is pulling their weight and headed in the same direction. That's why SBI uses proven techniques to bring everyone on your team on board with successful, standardized sales programs, enabling victory at the turn of every quarter.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment with Michael demonstrating how to capture the attention of customers and prospects. Let's jump back into our questions. So I'm going to get a little tactical on you now. Yeah. So we're talking about campaigns, campaign planning, capturing the attention of people that have the attention span of a gnat. Right. So to do this, you got to have a lot of content assets, and they've got to be mapped to the buyer's journey. So how do you guys handle content? How do you map it to the buyer's journey?
There's a couple of things I think to think about there. One of them is people, they simply don't have time to figure things out, right? So you may have the most rock solid proof, logic built message, right? Or and there's no way that anybody could ever dispute any part of it. But it's so complicated that no one knows what you're talking about, and they just move on because they have a million things to do, and there's at least several other people in your space that are saying it possibly saying it more clearly. So you've got to focus on that. People I often use a phrase that people have choices. You've got to give them a reason to choose you, but you can't expect them to figure it out. It's got to be really clear. So I think that's one piece. There's another piece that we focus on, and I like to call this, it's our before and after marketing, right? And everyone loves the extreme makeover shows, the fixer-upper from the folks down in Waco, right? Everyone loves to see, this is what it looked like, and it could be like a body transformation if you're working out, or it could be, a house. I use that because it's so personal, and people can see, oh yeah, my life it was horrible before this, but look what it could be, right? It could be so awesome. So what we do is try to find those use cases or those problems that people will identify with, and give the before and after. And if we've done it right, which I think we have most of the time, the before they immediately identify with, and the after they see this wonderful future and a vision of what things could be.
Yep. And I'm assuming, if I think about a buyer's journey, even a circular one, the before comes before the after, correct?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, right. So you would get their attention with that, and then there may be multiple steps in there, or it may be the next step. But you could say, here's what it looks like before, and then you can show some content along the way that says, here's how you get to the after, and then ta-da, here's the after.
That's a great example. Earlier in the show you talked about taking consumer marketing techniques to B2B. The before and after, that's a great example of that, right? Very good.
And everybody identifies with it. Everyone.
I watch them all the time.
You can't wait for that, like someone to move a bus, right, or pull the shades apart. The trick is doing that effectively on the B2B side. It's not easy to get that before and after captured so that people really connect with it. Yeah. The more times you try it, the better you get each time at it, though.
Yeah. Okay. So where we are now in our conversation is we've got all these beautifully designed campaigns and strategically aligned campaigns out in the market, and they're generating inquiries. Okay. And now you've got to process the demand, so to speak, which means you need systems and people. So tell me how you process the demand.
So we use a combination of machine qualification and people in the process. So not everything that comes inbound is qualified or is ready to talk to someone. They could have just been interested in a white paper, as an example. So not unlike other companies, we do scoring. Right? So an inbound lead gets a score from 0 to something. We pick a threshold, and when we hit that threshold, it goes over to someone to look at it, for someone to personally call them back and qualify further, and then pop it over to a rep.
So I get the machine. Many people want to argue about the validity of lead scoring. I say you're missing the point, right? Don't worry about you being precise. Be directionally correct, right? What are you trying to do?
That's right.
Determine, what's the response going to be,
yeah.
Right? Machine or person.
Yeah.
Then you send it to a human.
Yeah. Is
that human a lead qualifier in marketing? Is that human a salesperson?
So I've seen it go either way. Where I've found it more successful is in marketing, because they're more closely tied to the funnel, how they got to that point. Where if you're really doing it right, the salespeople are they're at the point where they're engaging someone, really understanding the problems, and then moving through the cycle. So I found it better when they're in the marketing department. It also, despite everyone's best efforts, if it's in the marketing department, that feedback on quality is just closer, and so you can adapt the upstream activities to improve the quality. And even though a rep may want to, they're doing a million things, and then taking the time to call back and say, oh, by the way, that one that you sent me, here's what it just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I agree. In-house, or do you outsource that?
In-house for us.
In-house.
Yeah. I've gone outsource a couple times, and I've found that there's a good use case for going outside. And what I found was, if I'm dealing with a lot of volume and maybe I want to get people to an event, I found a lot of success going outside, having people qualify someone or do a light qualification, and then getting them to attend an event. But when it's the leads coming in that are specific to your organization, I found it better inside.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, last question, which is a doozy, the mother of all questions. It's this question I get asked the most by you and your peers, and that is revenue attribution. Okay, so it's super hard to do. First touch, last touch, linear, non-linear, signal attribution. I mean, you name it, there's like 800 statistical models that claim to be the perfect one. So what's your opinion on revenue attribution?
You got to look at multiple things. You can't look at any particular one, and from that you can decide or understand if something's working or not. What I do like to see is if you've set up your processes intentionally and really thought through what you want to track at each step, you can get pretty close to attribution, from leads coming in, converting to a qualified, to an opportunity, and then to close business. If you set up your systems right to track that, you have pretty good visibility into what's working and what isn't. There's always going to be that conflict of a salesperson may have found it, or a lead came in, or you were working with a partner and at the same time someone registered something. You're always going to have that. There's no perfect answer to that. But what I have found is if I can get the system set up to take me through from lead to business, to close business, I have directionally what's working and what isn't. I can then go a click down into the specific campaigns and say, in these campaigns, what are the tactics that are working, and where should I invest more or less? But the key to that isn't the reporting, it's setting up the systems to be able to track it. And that's where it's hard, right? That is a lot of really hard work. You have to be really thoughtful of what the whole context you're working in. But if you invest the time to do it, you get some pretty good data and insight that'll come out of it.
All right, Michael, we're out of time. But thanks for coming to the studio and being on set today. We learned a lot from you, so I appreciate you coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
All right.
All right, and I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. Guess what? In addition to this show being the most listened to show on the internet in our little niche, we've now become the most watched show on the internet in our little niche, or our category. And the in-studio, on-set guest appearances have really made a big difference. So thanks for watching and keep tuning in. We'll do more of that in the future. If you want to learn more about this topic or the other areas that we focus on, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. This allows you to personalize your experience with our content, get to what we call the logged-in experience. And once you're logged in, you can choose the type of topics you're interested in and how often you want to learn about them, and really customize your experience and how you engage with our content. Okay, that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.